Hey guys, it's Joe from American Muscle, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Eibach anti-roll front and rear sway bars, tubular, fitting all 08 and newer Challengers, excluding the 392s, Demons, Hellcats, and Scat Pack cars. Now this is going to be a great option for any Challenger owner out there looking to get a name brand set of sway bars that's going to reduce body roll and therefore improve handling in all situations that your Challenger is going to be in. So what do we have going on here with the Eibach? Well, first things first, let's dive into what these are made out of. Then we'll go into some of the features, and a little bit later on we'll show you how to get these installed. These are made out of cold form aircraft grade steel. They feature that awesome classic Eibach red powder coating on there. These are going to be just as strong as a solid bar and at the same time keep the weight nice and low by being hollow. These are going to be two-way adjustable, so you can really dial in exactly how you want these to feel. You can go with the one further toward the front for a little bit softer of a sway bar and the one more toward the rear for a little bit stiffer of a sway bar. And that adjustability is on both front and rear bars as well. This kit also includes all the bushings and grease needed in order to get these installed. Now this is sold as a kit, so that's going to include both the front and rear sway bar, and like I said earlier, bushings and the grease you need. Now the tubular version is going to be a little bit more expensive, right around 440 bucks. You can pick up the solid version for around 400 if you were looking to save a little, and you can buy these piecemeal if you wanted to build this up over time. Now with that said, the rear is a little bit tough to take apart, and while we're in there, I would highly recommend going with a set of at least lowering springs, shocks and struts if you do have the money, coilovers if you really got the money. They're going to make the biggest difference for your suspension. These are definitely going to help really dial out some of the roll on an otherwise heavy car, but it's going to be easier if you plan to do that full suspension swap. Do it now, all in one shot, rather than taking this back apart and putting it back together. Now the rear, like I said, it's a little bit tough, and for that, I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter. There's no cutting or modifications required to get this installed. However, it is a little bit involved. It's gonna be a test of the toolbox. At most, I think this will take you about 5 to 6 hours to get completely wrapped up. So without any further ado, I'm gonna show you what tools you need, and then we'll install some sway bars. Tools required for this install are going to include an impact or two, ratchets, an exhaust hanger removal tool, extensions, sockets ranging from 8mm all the way up to 18mm, a U-joint, rust penetrant like PB Blaster is a great idea, wrenches ranging from 15mm all the way up to 21mm, some safety glasses, also a great idea, a pry bar, and not included in this shot will be a floor jack. If you're on a lift, bring some pole jacks. So we're gonna start our install up at the front, basically because this is gonna be exponentially easier than the rear, but stick with me, like I said, we're gonna make it through this. So, first things first, we're going to disconnect our sway bar from the end links. We're gonna be turning the nut with a 21mm wrench, and we're gonna be holding the ball joint still with a 10mm socket. We're gonna do that for both sides. Then we can pull off the nut and washer, pull the end link out of the sway bar, and again, we're gonna go over to the other side and do the same thing. Now we can focus on our bushing brackets. This is gonna be pretty simple. First things first, we gotta get that heat shield off. That's held on with 2 8mm bolts, one on either side. With that out of the way, we have access to these two 15s right here. That's gonna be the same exact thing. Take a 15mm socket on the ratchet. We're just gonna break those loose. Now we can jump over and do the same thing for the other side. Now with all that removed, all we have to do is grab our bushing bracket, which is just about to fall off. Same thing goes for the sway bar itself. So now that we have our factory sway bar off of our Challenger, I figured now would be the perfect time to put the two on the table next to each other and point out some key differences here. Now, the first and most obvious one, it's gonna be the finish. Our new front sway bar has that nice classic Eibach red on there, but it has some functionality as well. We're actually upping the diameter of this sway bar. Factory is about 1.2 inches. This is gonna be about 1.4 inches, so that's gonna give you a little bit more torsional strength on the Eibach, therefore preventing roll. Other than that, there's really not a big difference between these two. You do have two holes drilled on either side here for a little bit of adjustment if you do want to loosen this up a little bit later on down the line, but other than that, it's a sway bar. It's a little bit thicker, a little bit more torsionally tough, got that red finish, and a little bit of adjustment. Now we do have to do just a tiny bit of prep work before we head back to our Challenger with this. These bushings, they get installed on the outside of these rings here, but first, they do need to be lubricated with this grease, which does come in the kit. Now, obviously, we're also going to need our sway bar bushing brackets. Now we can head back to our Challenger. Now we're just gonna take our sway bar and put it up into these rear brackets here. We did lose this side earlier. Just make sure that's back in place before you do this. And just like so. That is gonna sit right in there. Then we'll put the top bracket on and secure it with the factory 15s. Now, as we're doing this, a couple of things to note. This bushing is a little bit tough. Catch a thread or two, we'll get the rest of this compressed as we tighten these down. Also, the exhaust is right here. Don't burn the tops of your hands, wear gloves. Make sure the car's cool before you do this. And now we can just tighten them down. Again, 15mm socket. As per the usual, same thing for the other side. And after that, just gonna reinstall our heat shields using that factory hardware. And we'll hit the other side as well. So now we have a bit of a choice to make here. There are 2 points to mount up your end link. One is a little bit further away and one right here that's gonna be a little bit closer to where the sway bar rotates, which is all the way back here. Now the longer one, that's gonna be a little bit softer. You have a bigger lever arm to operate against the torsion of this sway bar. You can go with the one that's a little bit closer to this rotation point. That is going to be a shorter lever arm, and it's gonna fight a little bit more against the torsion in the sway bar. In our case, we're gonna bring that as close as possible to the rotation point right here, making this as stiff as possible because race car. And again, 21 for the nut, 10 for the ball joint. We're gonna do the same exact thing for the other side, obviously. The sway bar in the rear, it's just on top of the subframe. So that pretty much means we're gonna have to disassemble all of the stuff in the rear. Now we're gonna try to make this a little bit easy on ourselves just by unbolting this subframe and lifting the car away from it a couple inches. Hopefully at that point we can get the sway bar out. If not, we're gonna have to disconnect some fuel lines, get a little bit dirty with the gasoline. Same thing goes for the drive shaft. We're gonna try to skip that stuff for now and just get a little bit of room in there so we can pull out the sway bar. If not, we're gonna show you how to do that. But first things first, regardless, this exhaust is gonna have to go. Now it does have a couple hangers in the back here. Don't worry about the rubber isolators. Take a 13mm socket, loosen the hangers off of the Challenger, and then we're just gonna work our way back to the mufflers. We're gonna get those off as well. So 13mm socket on an extension. We're just gonna get up to this bolt here. And we're just gonna come back about a foot and do the same thing for this hanger bolt as well. Now the next hanger right after the mufflers here, this one is welded on, so a little bit of pry bar work later to get that out. It should be free. Now, I have that fancy exhaust hanger removal tool that really helps you out with those. This clamp has a 15mm nut. I'll loosen that up, I'll slide that over, and then we can pull off the tailpipe. Now our muffler is gonna have to come out as well. Our drive shaft is gonna hit on the actual body of the muffler. If you have an aftermarket exhaust, you might be able to get away with it. Same thing goes for the other side. Next, we're gonna have to unbolt this brake line bracket right here, held on with a 10mm bolt, which is all the way up here behind this fender liner. They give you a cutout here, but it doesn't really give you access to the bolt, which is a little bit strange. However, it is pretty coarse threaded, and that means you can come up here with the tiny 10mm on the ratchet, and it couple cranks that should come loose. We're gonna do this for both sides. Now that is hooked up in there. Now once you release that hook, pull this down, you can see it at the top. You should get a little bit more flex out of that brake line. That's exactly what we need. And here we are over on the other side. It's actually even a little bit tighter over here, but that small pin should do the trick. It's all exactly where it landed, so we can unhook that bracket and pull it away from the Challenger. Now we can do the top of our sway bar end link, 16mm socket for the nut side, 15mm socket for the bolt head. Work that bolt out of there. We're gonna do the same thing over here on the driver's side as well. Now we're gonna remove our upper shock mount. Two 16mm bolts hold this on. U-joint helps, small extension will help you get to these. We're also gonna need to disconnect these two wheel speed sensors here, and to do that, just press on the red release tab and then the release button. There you go. And do the same thing for this one. It can put up a little bit of a fight, so the flathead is your friend. So now we're ready to try unbolting our subframe. It's held on with four 18mm bolts, one in each corner. As you can see, ours is supported by this table here and a couple of wood blocks. So once we have it disconnected, we're gonna lift the Challenger up just enough to get that factory sway bar out, and then we can get our new Eibach in. Now, if you don't have a lift like this one, which let's face it, most of you guys probably don't, I'm sure you could get this done with a few jacks and wood blocks in the driveway. Now these can be a little bit tough to get out, but we're not going to remove them all the way just yet. Just to make sure this subframe doesn't slide around anywhere, we're gonna leave these threaded in just a little bit. Now we're gonna hit this front one. You are gonna need an extension to get up through this plastic piece here. So now we're just going to raise our Challenger away from the subframe. One thing to note is when you separate the body from the subframe, the springs are gonna wanna fall out, so don't be surprised. Have a good hand on your springs before you lift your Challenger. All right, so everything went pretty smooth. We got about a solid 5 to 6 inches out of travel. As far as the subframe goes, that should be enough for you. We're gonna try to get the air ratchet in there. I know I can get this one in the front, however, this one in the back, that's probably gonna need the ratcheting wrench. Then we can take that bushing bracket off, hit the other side, and hopefully start to fish this guy out. On the driver's side, you can get both of them with the air ratchet. Plenty of room in there. Enough to land a 747, honestly. So, now, bracket can go, and we start the removal. So now that we have our factory stuff off of our Challenger, again, figured I'd stop down, do a little bit of a compare between our old factory sway bar and our new Eibach. Starting off with the most obvious thing, again, our new rear sway bar sporting that classic Eibach red. It's a good look when you do see the sway bar. Again, I have to admit that this is really, really tucked up on top of the subframe, so it's rare you'll ever see it, but it is red, so that's a nice touch. One thing I found interesting is the Eibach is actually about 1/10 of an inch thinner in diameter when comparing it to the stock one, but because we're going to that adjustable sway bar and we're shortening that lever arm relative to where this is going to rotate on our Challenger, that should lead to more torsional strength in this bar here. At least that shorter lever arm out there on the end should make this a little bit harder to twist and therefore dialing out any sway with the sway bar. Other than that, we do need to do just a little bit of prep work before this goes back onto our Challenger. We're gonna be installing these bushings. One thing to note about these is you do wanna make sure that this opens up toward the rear of the Challenger. So we're gonna install those that way. We're gonna grease them up first and then transfer over our bushing mounting brackets. And now we're just gonna put this bad boy in, feed it around the brake lines like so. Now we're just gonna strap the bushing down with the bushing bracket. We're gonna use the 2 factory 15mm bolts. And we're going to do the same thing for the other side as well. Now we're just gonna very, very slowly lower our Challenger to the subframe. And as we're doing this, we're just gonna make sure that the coils are not binding up and get seated properly. Same thing with these shocks once we get there. We want the tops of these to line up with their bolt holes, obviously. And then once we're close enough, we're gonna get those bolts through to reattach our subframe. Now, once we get the two close enough, we could come in with our subframe bolts and bolt the two back together. One thing to note here is the longer bolts are gonna be for the rear portion of the subframe. Then we're gonna do the same thing over here on the passenger side, and then to tighten these down, we're probably gonna jump around a bit. You wanna make sure this comes up nice and evenly and exactly where it was sitting before we unbolted it. We're gonna use an 18mm socket to tighten these back down. Now after that, it's just gonna be rebuilding the rear end of our Challenger here. So we're gonna start by plugging in these electronics that we undid earlier. We're just gonna wait until those click in, and then we can push that red release tab back to where it was. Now we can rebolt down our shock using that factory 16mm hardware. One thing to note, you might have to press up on the lower control arm a little bit with a jack to get the shock all the way up to where it needs to be to get these threaded in. We're gonna do the same thing for the other side. After the shock, we're gonna reinstall our sway bar, and if you remember, we're gonna go to the tighter option, and the bolt head was on this side. 15mm bolt head, 16mm nut. We're gonna tighten those down. We're gonna do the same thing over here on the other side. And it's just a little too tight for the air gun, so I'm gonna hop over to the ratcheting wrench. So now we're gonna get our brake line bracket back into place. Again, it's behind this fender liner. We're gonna use the factory 10mm bolt like so. And same thing goes over here on the other side. After that, we're gonna put our exhaust back together. We're gonna start with the mufflers. And again, 15mm socket to tighten down those clamps. Now we're gonna hit the other side and do the same exact thing, just like the rest of this video. Not that that's a bad thing. It makes everything pretty simple. Now we're gonna do the tailpipes right into the back of the muffler. You do wanna make sure those make it into that rubber hanger isolator up there. So you're gonna line that up and rotate that into place, just like so. Now we're gonna reattach our exhaust hangers, 13mm bolt. There's 2 of these on each tailpipe. And then we're gonna tighten the clamps up by the muffler to lock them in. And we're gonna hit the same thing over here on the driver's side as well. Now that's gonna do it for the install. There's 2 things left for us to do. A, put the wheels back on, and B, take this Challenger for a nice alignment. But that's gonna do it for me. It's also gonna do it for the Eibach anti-roll front and rear sway bars, tubular, fitting all 08 and newer Challengers, excluding the 392s, Demons, Hellcats, and Scat Packs. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more like this one. Keep it right here at American Muscle for all things Challenger.